first time you've been in Shaun's bedroom?
Have we started?
Yeah, that's the.
Oh, we are start. We're in. Are we going?
Yeah.
Shaun and I started dating. We have a bit of a. There was a homoerotic bond that began our friendship, I think, because we talked about hairy backs and things, and it was great. You know, on a serious note, we got talking on YouTube. I think you came on my channel first, and of all the people I've interviewed over hundreds of years, he's the by far maybe the only one I've become very close friends with. So
there's an area on the back when you're shaving that it's hard to do yourself, even if you dangle the electric razor down. So we had to help each other out with that patch.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. He's lying because he got his cleaner to do it before me. That's an absolute lie.
Is that who he told you that was? It's just a cleaner, Jen. It's the cleaner.
Honestly, right. My first question for you is: what was life growing up as a white Jewish privileged twat?
Shaun wrote these questions. Come on, Shaun wrote that.
She's darker than me.
Yeah, she is. I had a nice upbringing. It's hard, isn't it? Because your parents are alive. Mine are. You don't want to. You can't talk about them too much on camera and those kinds of things.
They're gonna watch it.
No, you never know, do you? They but they were fine and lovely, and it's an interesting thing because before getting into the whole ethno stuff that we all talk about, I think I was an atheist as long as I remember. I never believed in God of any kind. It was never even on my agenda. I regret that I don't have any of that spirituality or anything, because I know you guys do, and I sometimes envy having a bit of I wish I believed in some other things, and I just don't. So it didn't ever feel like I was Jewish in that sense. I suppose it was more of an ethnicity or a race. Because I did my one of those heritage things, and it with my blood or spit or something, and it said 95% Ashkenazi Jewish, and then it's like 4% Iberian, which was a surprise. But it never felt it didn't feel like any. I was just one of the white kids really. I didn't really think about it too much. A lot of my friends in northwest London were also Jewish, but then some of them weren't. You didn't always know who was and who wasn't. It was just we just sort of got on. Nowadays things feel a little bit different because some of the tensions. Particularly with Israel, but also Islamic immigration here, and some of the wokeness, and you suddenly become very aware of shit. If I were in Nazi Germany now, I'd be put on the trains, not for my beliefs or anything like that, but just for my whatever that is. God, I brought it down a bit, haven't I?
Can I apologise to your parents for you? Andrew said you were fine and lovely. I've met you guys. You are still fine and lovely. You can confirm that, can't you, Jen?
Definitely. And no, we're going to get on to your Islamic and woke views shortly, because I really want to hear about
my views on Islam and woke. My views are not Islamic and woke. I don't just want to conflate them.
No. What I wanted to start with, because this is the Andrew show, obviously, is... 1 minute, I've got to get my questions right.
Upside down's no good.
While you're doing that, do you want me to ask him a question about Liz Truss?
Well, yeah, whatever you want. Jump in.
All right, so if Liz Truss pinched your ass in an elevator, would you A, scream for help, B, call the cops, C, get a boner, or D, remain stum?
You are disgusting. This is going to be a really disgusting interview.
Well, that's fine.
You authorised it.
Quite serious.
I'm used to Shaun. You shouldn't have had Shaun in this, Jen. That was your first mistake. I think that there are rumours about Liz Truss, which I didn't mention when I interviewed her.
You're avoiding the multiple choice selection.
What was the fourth one again?
It was A, scream for help.
Yeah.
B, call the cops.
Wouldn't do that.
C, get a boner.
Wouldn't do that.
D, remain stum. Say
D.
nothing. Do nothing.
D. What would you do?
Because this is from obviously.
I'd sell the stories in the Daily Mail.
Of course you would.
Yeah.
But this is because you interviewed Liz Truss. For anyone watching who is unaware of that, link will be in the description box below this video.
Yeah.
How often do you say link will be in the description box below this video?
At the end only, because I say to someone, where's your whatever? What do you want to promote? And they say whatever it is, and I say we'll put the link in the description, and that's it really.
You're quite a relaxed interviewer, though. I've watched tons of your interviews, unfortunately, as painful as that was. I was trying to grasp more of a feel into Andrew Gold, what's he about, blah, blah, blah. And I went on, obviously, put you into Google, and you get to have a wiki page.
Yeah,
it's quite sad, really.
They won't put me there because Wikipedia is very left wing. It's been completely taken over by.
He's got a wiki page.
Well, that's no surprise. I mean, Shaun is an entity unto himself. It's just a different kind of thing. But you've had that Wikipedia page for years and years.
Did you put it up there?
How'd you do that?
Ah, lies! How do you do that? People have, on my behalf, put pages up for me, and they've been taken down by people who don't like that. Because you need to have certain references, and you have to be mentioned in certain newspapers, but they no longer count the Daily Mail, GB News. I think they would count the Times, but most of the ones I've been mentioned in. Whereas Shaun would have been mentioned, you'd have been mentioned in the Guardian and BBC, all of those. So Guardian, I have been BBC. I've been on BBC. I've done BBC things, but not enough for them, and they don't like the Daily Mail stuff, and and so they've taken them down.
They have to evolve organically. You're mentioned.
Yeah, I'm mentioned on his wiki page. Even I'm on there.
That's mad.
I know, right?
But good.
Mother of Siggy.
Exactly. So growing up, what were you like in school?
Very cheeky. Very, very cheeky.
See, I picture you as a bit of a nerd.
That's because I'm smart. But I went to a smart school, so everyone was smart.
You went to private school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a very posh private school. It was actually a public school. So the public school is not as an American as state school. In Britain, a public school is one of the sort of elite private schools. And it used to be a, what do you call it, where you stay the night.
It's boarding school?
Yes, it was that before I went. So they sort of transformed. They're becoming a bit more modern or whatever. But it meant that everyone there is like clever and nerdy or whatever. So you're always going to have some percentage of them are going to be the nutters and the bullies and not that I was one of the bullies, but or the jocks you have all the same groups. It's just within this kind of maybe nerdier, posher stratum.
So you were a bit of a class clown.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got hauled into like the headmaster's office all the time, and I had to sign a contract that said that I would not talk in class, and that if I had a question for the teachers, I had to wait till the end. I had to write it all down and bring the piece of paper to the teacher at the end and just say, like, here are my questions, which obviously I never had. But it was the first time they'd ever done that. It's a 600-year-old school, so they had to take specific measures for me that didn't involve expelling me. I just always a bit mouthy and question things a lot. So why are we doing this? You know, that kind of thing. And they had to shut me up, I think.
Hence why we're here today.
Well, I think so. That kind of personality probably is conducive to... I mean, I didn't do anything like the kinds of things Shaun's gone on to do over the years in terms of exploits. But I think you have to have some kind of sort of cheeky aspect to want to then become some form of YouTuber or maybe journalist. And I don't know. So I was in trouble all the time, thrown out of classes all the time. Parents called in, all of those kinds of things. But you know, that was... So it happened to my friends as well, because we were all mates together, and it would happen to us. But
that's shocking, because as I know you, I would have put you as someone who was quite quiet in school and nerdy, because then you went on to obviously work at the BBC.
Well, I didn't actually work for them. I made a documentary and sold it to them. Shaun, did you get that impression then? Would you have thought I'd be sort of quiet at school?
No way.
No?
No.
No. Like, I knew guys like you, because we're similar age, obviously, not his old age. If I'd seen you in school, I probably would have bullied you. I'm sorry.
You'd have been bullied by me. I was like the rugby team. I was like doing all that.
Do you like the rugby shirt?
Yes, I loved it. I recognised it. It brought back memories of my... But I was and then it was the football team. They allowed us to play football the last couple of years.
Yeah.
When I was... Because I went to... It was a private school as well when I was like 11 or something. You know, 10, 12, whatever age I was. The first school, prep school, they call it. And they only played rugby at these schools. And I guess it's some sort of... In the South, it's like a sort of posh private school thing that you play rugby rather than football. And so me and three of my mates, we sort of went and... we took a meeting with the headmaster. It was quite sweet of him looking back that he took a meeting with us, like as a professional. We were all very nervous and wearing our suits, and we sat down with him and we wanted to try to convince him to change rugby to football at the school, which obviously he was never going to do. But he took the meeting and he explained, well, we just can't quite do that because of this and that. And we were all like, oh, yeah, okay, all right. But yeah, and I was in the football team, and there was the sister school of ours. There was a private school down the road. Where the girls went, and you know what we did Friday afternoons was we did army. You had to dress in like army clothes and go around with guns and Like,
this doesn't sound like school.
I know. It's weird to look back that was a thing. It was Friday afternoon, and obviously it was very different because Monday to Thursday, all the boys would sort of be whatever they, just whatever. And then Friday, everybody came in, they had like concealer on their faces for their spots, acne and stuff, because we knew the girls' school were coming later. So everyone was suddenly like hair done and all this immaculate kind of stuff. And then at like, I guess like 4 p.m. or whatever, the girls' school would come over to our school and everyone was like, oh, and you'd be doing all this marching and stuff with putting guns together and wash cleaning them and going on these hikes. I don't know what we were doing really, but we were just excited to meet all the girls. That was what that was.
Imagine that going on these days.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure they're probably still doing it.
No.
You don't think they're doing that? The army thing, Friday? I reckon they do that.
No, there's like, so that's like crosses so many racial boundaries.
Why is racial?
Oh God, don't ask me questions.
Black people were allowed to do it. It wasn't like only white people or anything. It was.
No, it just sounds very.
Sounds old-fashioned. But
behind with the times. There we go.
I bet they do it. You had the choice between army, Duke of England. Is that a thing? I think Duke of Scotland, Duke of...
A lot of the schools that I speak at, I've got like a military
background.
They do what you said.
They do that ceremonial thing.
Yeah.
It's more about discipline and ceremony. You're not actually going to then join the ranks and go on the front line. It's about, you're wearing this uniform, you're all doing your disciplinarian stuff. Duke of Edinburgh, Army, Navy, and then the other thing was you could do community service. The geeky kids did that, and they would go and like hang out with old people in a home.
I was going to say that's what like criminals usually do when they get sentenced for low-level crimes.
It did feel like a prison of sorts. I mean, and not to underplay your experience, Sean, it wasn't quite like that, but it was very much like grey and drab. That's how I found it, and I had this personality, which you don't think I have. But
no, hold the phrase. I didn't say you didn't have a personality. It's just because you're so intellectual, and I was actually quite nervous doing this interview because I thought no, I'm just going to be my total self during it because I feel like you are proper book smart, like a bookworm, geeky smart, and I'm street smart.
Yeah, I mean, Sean's pretty educated as well, though, isn't he? Aren't you?
Just about.
There's not much he doesn't know about. Except waistcoats.
We'll explain that. Is Sean didn't know that you had to undo the last button. You can zoom in on the waistcoat, undo the last button of the waistcoat because it stops it from gathering. Interesting fact.
I think. Look, there are sort of the cheeky ones. Let's call them. You get them from working class. You get them in the posh class.
I was a
smart,
cheeky,
stupid.
like cast down as well.
There you go.
I got in so much trouble.
Yeah, so maybe, I mean, in we all, I don't know what it is, but we all imagine it like but every group has its sort of people who are trying to break out of whatever it is, and I hated it. I was sat there and I'm being told like this is what you've got. It's going to school, isn't it, and being disciplined. But I found it really boring. I was falling asleep in the classes. I wasn't doing well until I was about 17 or 18. I sort of pulled my finger out a bit and went for it a little bit more because I was falling really far behind. And they used to publish all of our results. They just put it on the wall. So it would start to get embarrassing, even if you thought you were too cool for school or whatever, to constantly, after every exam, I don't know how many kids there were in a year, 150 or something, and you'd see on the wall this kind of, how well people have done.
There's always the same ones at the top.
Well, I would just look from the bottom up, always. Bottom
One,
up.
2.
Yeah, and I would always be probably bottom of the year or bottom 5 out of like 150. So I had to buck up my ideas a bit. But look, that speaks to the Jewish thing as well, actually, because to an extent, and I'm obviously grouping lots of people in and generalising, but Jews tend to be nouveau riche, the ones who are wealthy enough to go to a private school. I mean, a lot of Jews I knew could never even thought of it. My family wouldn't be able to send me to one now. It's just they went through a few years where they had a bit of money, so it's very nouveau riche. A good example of that in celebrity culture would be Alan Sugar in the UK. He's a market stalls kind of guy who came good and did all right, and he's got that kind of voice. So we come from this nouveau riche background where none of our parents went to universities. Now I know that goes against the kind of nebbish New Yorker Jew, Woody Allen, but in England it's not that way. So none of us knew about rugby and cricket. We all played footy. It was more. We were all much more working class, but suddenly thrown into this environment. So I would go home again, and my parents would do more normal. What I would say is would go to Marbella, for holidays. Whereas these guys at school, maybe the sort of Church of England white, more traditional guys, were going to like Barbados or somewhere, or they were off to these. It was just this difference between the sort of the Jewish kids who tended to be nouveau riche, and would have also been a bit cheekier for that reason. They're a bit more like some of these guys then at lunch breaks, they were playing croquet. They're sitting there with straw hats on, playing croquet. And we would look at them and go, you're from a different planet. But then they're going home and their parents are talking to them of the cricket and the croquet and the straw hats. And they've all been to university, the parents and the parents' parents, and they're all doctors and surgeons. Whereas our parents were mostly, again, Alan Sugar types. They were sort of market boys who had done well. And so my parents would come into school and the school teachers would be livid about my behaviour and my results. And they would say, Mrs. Gold, we've got some bad news, and we think Andrew might only manage a C in his exam. And my mum would be, a C? My boy getting a C? And she'd delighted about it. So I didn't have the same pressure that a lot of the other kids had. But when I got to 17 or 18, it was like they're all going to Oxford and Cambridge, and I'm sat there like a plonker. I had to actually start reading some of the books, and quite liked reading in the end. So that's the sort of nebbish side I think you're seeing.
What is it your parents did?
My dad was in what the Jews call the schmutter business, which is more Yiddish than Jewish. Yiddish being a German kind of language that came from German. That when they were in the ghettos, they sort of spoke that was slightly different from German. You can almost understand Yiddish if you speak German. So I speak German. I can understand a bit of Yiddish. And the word schmutter is about knitwear, jumpers, those kinds of things. So he started a company which did really well in the 90s for 10 years or so, where he would get it was like an old-fashioned thing. It doesn't exist anymore. They were the middlemen, the manufacturers or whatever. They would send out they would design the knitwear, and another company, the factory, would then give it to them, and then they would sell it on to Burton's, Topman, Arcadia, those kinds of companies. And that stopped existing more or less. Now it would be those the Burton's, ASOS, or they would now go straight to the factory. So those sort of middlemen people have slowly stopped being a thing to some extent. And then my mum just various jobs. She worked at a dentist, then she worked at a estate agent. On reception, those kinds of, and showing homes. She sort of changed a few times, but those kinds of things.
Right, thank you. So leaving
You're
school. I know, I hate being official. That's the one thing I'm like not natural at.
Oh,
when you're like interviewing, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to be like having the question prepped, and having that sort of routine, and what do you call it? Is something you call it when you put it in order? Oh, my mind's gone blank.
Oh, in chronological order, a life story.
Order, like.
Yeah.
It really fucking irritates me. Yeah. I just like natural chats.
Just do some chatting.
That's what I do.
You do it brilliantly.
But I've got to sit here and obviously find out about your mundane life that you're doing. So
I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So no, you left school, university.
Mm.
Didn't you get beat up at university?
Bloke punched me. That's why you think I got bullied. And you were thinking, God, if I was at school with him, I would have bullied him so much.
I would have punched him. Yeah. No.
This was this thing of like, Leeds is one of these cities where there's loads of them in the UK where they become almost university towns. And obviously that stokes some divisions with the locals who firstly don't want all this university stuff on their doorstep. And secondly, there might be a chip on a shoulder. There might be, that they couldn't go to this kind of university, and they might. So you get these kind of divisions, and not that often, but sometimes things are said. This was a fellow who was a bit of a drug addict, and he was sort of sitting on the floor or something. I don't know what. And I had left my home with this lovely peanut butter and jam sandwich, or peanut butter and jelly for the Americans watching. And I was very excited about it. It was snowing, and I thought, I think I'd probably toasted it. So you can imagine how nice this sandwich would have been. And as I was walking, this fella goes, "Oh, mate, you got a sarnie?" And I went, "Oh, what's a sarnie?" Because it's slang. And he goes, "That's your sarnie." And he means my sandwich. And I went, "Oh, my sandwich." Yes. And I kept sort of walking, but he was sort of walking with me. And he had a few mates sort of like back wherever he had been from. And he was like, "Gives your sarnie, mate. Give us your sarnie." And I went, the thing is, mate, I really want this because I've just made it really nice, peanut butter jam. I'm having a nice time. It's a nice snowy day. And if I'd known
Sean's loving this because it's ending with a punch.
It's literally a punchline. And so I said, look, had I known you'd be in the premises and in need of some sustenance, I would have made 2 sandwiches. You see the dilemma we have, sir. And no, I didn't say it. I didn't say any of that because I wasn't actually very eloquent back then, and I didn't have the accent I have now, which is another point.
Whoa! Yeah, I need to know that story.
A friend of mine came out when I was living in Argentina. I'd been there a few years, and a friend came out because he moved to Argentina as well by coincidence. And the first thing he said to me, we chatted for a while. He said, "What the hell has happened to your voice?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Your accent's completely changed." And I think what happened was I lived for such a long time. This is the next part of the story, I suppose, in different countries. Sean will probably recognise this, living with Americans for so long. You speak clearer. Well, yeah, a clear voice happens to also be a posh voice. It sounds posh if you speak clearly. Not necessarily, but the way I went about it. So I'm constantly, I was speaking Spanish in Argentina, but sometimes people want to speak to me in English. Well, they don't really speak English. So I'm going, "Hello, how are you today?" And I used to speak funny, and there's also there's the class issue that British people are very, very attuned to that other countries won't be so much. But I remember my dad, I must have been like 9, and he took me to a Tottenham game. We used to go to the Tottenham games, and we couldn't get a seat where I could sit next to him as well as my brother. We brought my brother along, so my dad managed to find a seat 5 or 6 seats down. So he had to take me over, and he said to the 2 fellas either side, like, "This is my son Andrew. He'll be sitting here like this year. It was a season ticket. He'll be sitting here, you know." And football was a working class game, you know. And I was, even at 9 years old, very aware of this. And I sat down, and my dad sort of left me there, and I was with these 2 fellas, and I just went, "All right, lads, how you doing?" And I had to keep that up then for 10 years of my season ticket sat there.
No.
Yeah, and gradually I was at this posh school, you know, I had to and if my dad came over, I had to sort of not let them hear me talk to my dad in my normal voice. So, but the point is I flitted between the 2.
A chameleon.
Very much a chameleon, yeah. Which is a sign of psychopathy, but it's also a sign of extreme empathy.
No.
So it can be either side. Well, either you're an empath who goes, "Gosh, I want to make sure that everybody feels all right and I can be part of this and everyone's good." That's the anxiety empath. Or you're a psychopath going, "I'm going to find a way to, trick them into thinking I'm like them." I think I was on the empath side, very anxious and wanting to fit in and not to look like some posh tosser.
Insecure then.
Yeah. Well, like, most kids are, aren't they? So it was really years of very gradually making my voice more like it actually is. But it also felt very natural. It is natural even now for me to go back into that old sort of London voice because that's how I talked growing up with people.
Well, I have noticed when you take the mick out of Sean, you sometimes get a Cockney accent.
Yeah, yeah. It naturally comes back.
Yeah.
I remember asking my dad as well, like years later. I was like, you start to think about class, and I said, "Dad, we're in the car." I said, "Dad, are we posh?" And he goes, "Well, you are." And that was so weird. Like, I'm a different thing from you. What is this? But that is how it all works. There is movement, and you know. But anyway, this fella in Leeds.
We're back to the
punching.
Sarnie punching.
The Sarnie punch. Yeah. I wasn't as posh as I am now. I definitely didn't sound as posh as I do now. And by the way, I still don't sound posh compared to, I don't know, someone like Matthew Steeples, just for reference to this show. I mean, those are levels. There are levels to this game. They are well above. But I still sounded like a twat to this fella who had the same kind of urge that you have of wanting to bully me. And eventually I relented and provided said man with half the sandwich, which I thought was very fair because I was intimidated. So I said, "Would you like half of the peanut butter and jam sandwich?" And I presented it to him, and he flapped it out my hand on the floor. At which point I knew I was in for something big here. That was the moment I knew this was no normal sandwich exchange, let me tell you. So, at that point, he goes, "You think I want your fucking sarnie?" And I go, "Well, that was intimated at the time. When the negotiation was brokered, this was the suggestion. And by all means go back on it, but don't make me at fault for this. You wanted the sandwich, I offered it to you." And he goes, "I don't want your fucking sarnie, mate. I don't want your sarnie." And I went, all right. Well, I just kept walking. And as I'm walking, he's walking with me, sort of aping me a bit. He's doing that. And then, out of nowhere, whack! He just whacks me in the sort of jaw there. And then it's quite sad now. It's a funny setup, and it's actually quite sad. I was 18. I was a bit scared. Yeah, it was sad. And it's not the only time. It's one of the only times I've been hit. And I sort of kept walking. I thought, don't run because he'll chase. And I just walked and sort of got away. Eventually he sort of went back to his mates and gave up. But I had a bit of a bruised, when you clench your teeth, it was sort of bruised for a few days. But I got a good story out of it.
You did. That was quite entertaining, wasn't it? Mildly. So you left university. What was next?
Uni. Well, I studied in France for a year. That was great.
You studied media, I take it.
English literature. Yeah, literally.
What was the goal?
The goal was it was the subject I least hated. So I'd go and do this thing, read a bunch of books, which I mostly didn't read, because people. It was extraordinary. The people doing English. You know who was there actually? It was Chelsea Davy.
Really?
She was at Leeds the same time as me.
That's Prince Harry's ex, isn't it?
Yeah. So you'd be walking around the campus and you suddenly see a group of people all going, looking, and it was Chelsea Davies there. So she was there. But it was, some people have this extraordinary ability, because obviously students, they don't do very much work and they drink a lot and blah, blah, blah. And I engaged in all of those activities. Shaun was probably providing the bits and pieces. It was the only time in my life where... I
don't think he was supplying to the UK.
No. I'm sure it got back somehow, though. And ketamine and cocaine were huge. Ketamine in particular on Leeds, or the university, was just massive. So that was, listening to Radiohead. Everybody was on the K.
Did you go into a K-hole?
I did a few times and nearly died, but I mean, who doesn't have those kinds of stories?
Can I hear about that?
It was just, it's the mistake that everybody makes of thinking that it's some sort of drug you should take on a night out. I don't really understand.
No, I made that mistake once.
It's mad. So you're drinking, you're having some of the white stuff, and then you're having some of the K stuff, and suddenly you're lifting your legs around this place.
Like that? You feel like you're walking really slow and everything's in slow motion. Like
exactly.
That,
my legs were heavy, and at the same time, just no matter how completely gone I was, there's part of my head going, God, you're making an embarrassment of yourself. What a fool you look. Walking around, because there's all like other people out there who are sort of making face, oh God, what is this? And you're lifting your legs. And I remember just going home after that and can't get in my house. I was trying for ages, the fucking key won't work and I can't get in. I just need to get in, and then someone opens the door and it's the wrong house, and those kinds of things are going on. A few times just lying outside at like 3 a.m. in the snow, and people died doing that. It's mad looking back.
I nearly ended up, I nearly died. I went into a coma.
Jesus.
3 days.
From ketamine?
Ketamine, yeah. That's why I don't touch it these days. Tempting as it is.
What if I told you, Jen, you're still in that coma?
Don't. The interview I've just done with Emily.
Jen, wake up.
I would believe that,
wake
honestly.
Wake up.
We're in a parallel universe
now. Wake up.
Oh, God.
Jen,
if I'm waking up and this is the shit I'm waking up to.
No, you're waking up in a hospital bed.
Yeah,
this isn't happening right now.
I fucking not.
Nobody could be as insane as Shaun. You've imagined him.
I've created this baby Ziggy from AI.
Honestly,
it's like a virtual reality baby.
He cheated on me. I'm still angry at him.
Oh, yeah.
Angry with him.
It's funny though, because Shaun was out last night.
Smell your charging!
I'll have to explain that story at some point during this interview, or everyone will think we're nuts, which we are. So I'm sorry, I wrongly assumed that you studied media and then went on to obviously work at the BBC, which you did not.
No, I've implied it. I put on my Twitter, fallen BBC presenter. I mean, the reality is I made a documentary completely on my own.
Which we'll talk about that.
Oh yeah, Exorcism. Well, not completely on my own, actually, that's unfair. But what I mean on my own compared to not with a production company kind of thing. But I was out in Argentina and we did all that stuff, and it took years of pestering the BBC to get somebody to watch it. And eventually they did. They didn't really pay us, and they didn't treat us very well. But so that wasn't. No, I studied English after uni. I went back to France to work in book publishing in Bordeaux. Worked at a book publisher there, which was a lovely little life for a while. Then I worked at HarperCollins Publishers, doing boring things that 21-year-olds do when they first get a job. All the menial tasks. And I was going to be in book publishing, and I decided to go into journalism, and I did a 6-month course at Lambeth College, which was a free course because I didn't have any money.
Why did you want to do that then, change?
I didn't really know what to do. I was living with a guy who also wanted to do the course, so we did it together. And then I ended up afterwards working at The Sun, and he got a job at the Daily Mail, and we lived together. We both did nights, so we used to come home at 5 a.m. and sort of talk about our night and be like, bloody hell, how was it at the Mail and how was it at The Sun?
Were you lovers?
We were lovers of other people. But yeah, he was he was nice, and he said, let's do this journalism course.
So it wasn't even your idea. You literally piggybacked your mate's idea to get to where you are today. That's another place you
bit like
piggybacked.
Zuckerberg.
He was
Jewish as well.
He wasn't Jewish. He wasn't. This guy wasn't Jewish. He was Christian as it gets. Well, I don't think.
You piggybacked off his idea.
Yeah, but he wasn't Jewish. Is what I mean.
No, but Zuckerberg is. And
Zuckerberg.
And he stole.
I didn't make Facebook or
but he
another.
stole the idea, didn't he?
Off those two twins.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, facts.
Yeah, but he executed it better.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't. Yeah.
I mean, those twins had the idea. He had the idea.
Speaks bad of Zuckerberg is basically jealous of his billions of pounds. You know.
I don't know enough about him, to be honest. I mean, look, it is funny that he was this sort of. He was this geeky lizard, wasn't he? And then he's this like bro with like the muscles, and he's this cool guy now. Don't know where that came from, but did that course. And the funny thing about that course, you do 6 months, and it's mostly learning to do shorthand, which is like dots and squiggles instead of writing. So you can, and the main reason,
like the doctor's notes, like
well, the doctor's notes aren't actually that. I think they're just bad handwriting. Whereas it's dots and squiggles and hyphens and weird things to learn, and it's so you can write fast if you don't have a recorder. So if you're recording people,
that's behind the times, isn't it?
It's I don't think it's obligatory anymore. But when I did it about 14 years ago, it was, and that was the main thing, because you have to get to 100 words a minute, and you've only got 5 months. You just write super fast. They have like a thing at the front, doing a passage, reading out a passage, and you've got to be boom 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 boom. Then you get like 10 minutes to then translate what you've just dotted and slashed into actual writing, and that's the exam. And so all the stuff about politics and economics and the government that you're supposed to be learning is like 1%, and 99% was, can I write shorthand fast enough, which I never used afterwards.
And can you though?
I can probably do it now, but it would.
I feel like that's something you've got to like reinstate.
Yeah, it would be sluggish. It would be, and it wouldn't be as good. And but it's pointless unless you're in court where you're not allowed to do recordings. So people have to do these notes to do that. It was a waste of time. And so, I mean, after that, I got this job at The Sun doing notes. And I was the guy who was responsible for putting the page 3 girl up onto the iPad where she was 360 degrees and you could twist her around. So that was my job at like 4 a.m.
How many Tommy Tanks did you have over that job?
Jesus, Jen. The thing is, if page 3 girls are your type, that might not have been my type at the time. But either way,
I believe it would have been.
There are.
I believe you are lying. To be Andrew.
Well, I mean, there are cameras in the Sun's HQ, you know, so it wasn't like everybody was like, all my team were looking over. You doing the page 3 again? Let me just quick under the table, you know. We were controlled people.
Which models was it back then? It would have been Jordan.
I think I was a bit after. I mean, Jordan was a long time. I don't know. Maybe she was sometimes there. I don't remember who they were. To be honest, I know it sounds like, you know, that it's one of those jobs where it's like it's your job and it's very menial and mundane, and it's not that you're sitting there going, oh, who's the page 3 girl tonight? It's going.
No, you must. I'm not being funny, Andrew. You would have been looking at the tits. And like, tiny knickers they wear.
But that stuff is, I mean, if you are that way inclined, which most men are, that stuff's pretty widely available online. It's